Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for listening to Facilities in Focus. It's always nice to be a part of your journey on the internet. In case you forgot, my name is Mackenna Moralez, and I am the Associate Editor of FacilitiesNet and your host of this very podcast. I am sure my excitement about our guest is starting to sound a little redundant, but let me assure you, I genuinely mean it every single time. But with that being said, I'm very excited to introduce our guest today. I am joined by Machion Jackson. Machion is the Deputy Superintendent of Operations for Detroit Public Schools Community District and a former building operating management cover star and advisory board member. In her position, she oversees technology, facilities, nutrition, transportation, real estate, and capital improvements. With over 20 years in education as a teacher, principal, and now in her current role, she has led major district-wide initiatives, completing over 300 capital projects, solving the district's water crisis, reactivating schools, and guiding a $700 million facilities master plan that includes building new schools without additional taxpayer costs. She is a proud native Detroiter and committed equity advocate and serves on several local and national boards focused on student success and community development. Thank you so much for joining me today, Machion. How are you?
I am fine. I am well, Mackenna. Thank you so much for welcoming me. As you were speaking, I was wondering, wait, who has done all of that? But
Oh,
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention I have a pretty remarkable team, and it just gives me such good pleasure to meet with you today to talk about the team's work.
my gosh, you're so humble. And I do feel like a little kinship towards you because I wrote your building operating management cover story a couple of
You
years back.
did. You
I
did.
did.
You did. And it was so exciting. I received numerous calls and text messages because of that article. I can't thank you enough. It evidently resonated with other facility operation managers and COOs across the country. And it just gave me such great pleasure to be able to sew into them and show, just my thoughts about doing the work and assembling a team and all the things that encompasses.
Oh my gosh, that's so nice. But I just wanted to show you my current view of the office.
Oh my goodness, no way. Oh my gosh, not the cover story in the office. That is so cool. That is
So
so cool.
I know that this is an audio medium podcast, but in our office is a big, giant poster of Michonne's cover,
Oh
magazine cover.
gosh,
And so
I
I
can't
get to see you every day that I come into the office.
We'll talk about a humbling experience. Oh my gosh, I'm so honored that you guys would place that in your office. I'm so honored, but moreover, we're really honored that not only that you considered our work then, but that you're considering our work now.
Like you said, the work continues, and I think that's a really good transition into what we're talking about today because we're talking about controlling deferred maintenance. And I feel like I told you this before we started recording, but you were our number one choice to talk about it because of
Oh
everything that
my
you've
gosh.
done for Detroit and just how you have improved this. I know you're not going to like that I'm saying this, but you have improved the city, whether you want to believe it or not, because
Oh,
you're
the
making the
pressure is
schools
on.
better.
The pressure is on. The pressure is on. Oh my gosh. Again, we've been fortunate to do work, and we've had like this whole resurgence of our city. Detroit as a whole, as well as our school district. We've been very fortunate now. We're under a fully elected school board after years of emergency management and state control. We have a superintendent that was chosen by the fully elected board. That superintendent was able to establish his cabinet, of which I'm a member. And it's a great time. It's a great time in Detroit. It's a great time for our city. It's a great time for our school district. There's far more work to be done, especially considering some of the things that are taking place, unfortunately, at the federal level. But it's still a great time to do good work for children.
Right. And I feel like Detroit doesn't necessarily have the best reputation.
But
But
that's for people who haven't been to Detroit, especially recently. So we have a bustling downtown area now. As most people would know, Detroit unfortunately was the first major city to file bankruptcy years ago. Well, we look totally different now. Our downtown infrastructure and corridors are really strong. We've built lots of housing, affordable housing, mixed use buildings. There's a vibrant shopping center downtown, but moreover, we're also attending to neighborhoods. Neighborhood
mm,
stabilization is key. We have certain neighborhood stabilization funds that are taking place throughout the city. We also have a new Joe Louis Greenway, which is a walking path that's going to connect all of the neighborhoods throughout the city. And
how
it gives
cute.
us pleasure with the school district to be part of that, right? Because we
Right,
know that no city can be successful without a thriving school district. And I
right,
like to say that no school district can be thriving and can totally support the academic needs of the students as well as the environmental needs of the staff responsible for educating the students if you have buildings that are in need.
right. I really feel that in my heart currently because, as you may remember, I do live in Milwaukee now, and with the lead crisis that's going on in schools, I just see all like the community pages on Facebook just really freaking out about kids and their safety and everything. But what made you want to take on the challenge of deferred maintenance in schools?
Well, I think that challenge found me, quite frankly. It's not something that we sought. Even starting a year into the elected school board and our superintendent's tenure, that is when we learned that we had a water crisis, right? And that was from deferred maintenance of not improving our infrastructure, not attending to our plumbing, not flushing as we should have. It's also, quite frankly, a result of a decline in enrollment and not really right sizing so that the district could attend to those deferred maintenance needs as the population declined. And so in 2018, it seems like that was such a long time ago. Everything
Right.
now is like pre-COVID, before COVID, but in response to some of the things we do, it really wasn't that long ago when we conducted water tests and found severe elevations in pockets of a few buildings. And tackling deferred maintenance takes a lot of courage and it takes ownership, right? And so
Hmm.
our superintendent said, we have to shut off all water sources. Can you imagine? Can you imagine in 106 school buildings and another dozen office buildings, central office buildings, turning off the water supply for drinking water?
No.
It was arduous at best, but we did what we thought was right and what was needed because we just kept kicking, or prior to us, obviously, but the district as a whole kept kicking that can down the road. Like, we're not going to attend to these needs. And then again, what resulted was high elevations of lead and copper. But we were able to join with our philanthropic communities as well as our business communities to attend to the problem. All of that took place at the beginning of the school year in September of 2018. We developed a plan. That plan was rolled out in October of 2018. The school board approved it. And we raised about $3 million so that we could replace the drinking water sources throughout the district. And that work was completed prior to the next school year. So, when you ask my take on deferred maintenance and what caused me to gravitate, if you will, that it really found me like day one, right? Because
Right.
interestingly enough, I started September of 2018. And
Oh my
so
goodness.
I was faced, I was faced with, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. What is going on? But
Right.
we tackled it. And I think that's just an example of what so many facility managers, be it, with schools, with places of business, in social institutions, et cetera, and the like, even with regard to municipality bill or municipal buildings. Everyone is faced with needs that are far greater than their resources. And so what do you do? What do you do? How do you tackle that deferred maintenance problem? And I think first and foremost, like what we did with the water crisis, is you have to own it, right?
Right.
You have to identify and you have to own, like, these are the most pervasive issues. And I think you also have to rank and rate them, right?
Right.
So which ones are most severe? Of those that are severe, in terms of rating, you have to rank them and then prioritize the limited funding that we all have, whether you have to make additional widgets or whether you're educating students. You have to learn how to do more with less in order to attend to this deferred maintenance issue.
Right. I like how you said that we need to take ownership. I think that is something that everybody kind of struggles with when they're kind of in the wrong of something. But did you face backlash from people once you took that ownership?
Oh, absolutely, yes. So we believe in being transparent and engaging community members. And sometimes that is not popular, whether it's in the school district or whether you're in private industry. Finding an avenue or forum to engage your stakeholders or those end users, whether it's a product that you're selling, or in our case, we're educating children. We determined that we would engage community members, our parents, our students, as well as our educators, those frontline teachers and aides who are providing service for students. And yes, we received a considerable amount of backlash in terms of, how did this happen? What are you doing with the money? What have you been doing with the money? How much, water have we ingested? All of the things. But I think in preparing to be transparent, you have to fully develop a plan of what is it that you intend to communicate and what is the ultimate result of that communication. Is it we want to apprise you of the issue, and then this is how we're going to resolve it. And in cases of urgent situations, emergencies, things that are health related, the public, although they're going to give you backlash, they do want to see that you've come with a plan. They
Right.
want to know that they can trust you, particularly when you're dealing with public dollars, to do the right thing on their behalf. But then there are situations in which you can fully engage them, so that you can take their ideas to arrive at a resolution. Emergencies are not that. We're conducting numerous engagement sessions right now as we're moving forward with a historic facility master plan process. And we engage community members. We take products and we take design plans to them, and we ask to get a feel of their culture and the individual aspects that weave the fabric of their school and neighborhood identities. And we take that and create designs, and then take those designs to them after hearing their feedback, and ask them to vote on the designs that resonate best with them. We do that. And that has come out of a deferred maintenance issue, right? We haven't been able to update facilities as we should, or if there's a situation in terms of athletics, which is what we're doing also. There have been, unfortunately, athletic fields that have fallen victim to disrepair, and
Right.
some of our students can't. Can you imagine? Some students cannot play like playoff games on some of the fields because
Yeah.
they don't meet the criteria. And so we frame the problem, and
Mm.
we take that problem to the end users, and we share within a framework, like this is what we intend to do, but we engage them on the process. But in short, yes, you have to be willing to accept that criticism, and then listen to the criticism, because invariably there's going to be something said that you didn't think about in the planning process, even if it's just a tidbit, right? Can take on. And lastly, I would say, Mackenna, sometimes when we are transparent and open and announce something, and we say, and I'm saying we obviously in general, I'd say we want stakeholder feedback. I would encourage those to not seek feedback to just check a box, particularly
Right.
with tackling deferred maintenance issues. Really listen concretely, because these are issues that affect the day-to-day operations of the buildings that they spend most of their wake hours in, right?
Mhm.
So you have to take in, no, there's unequal heat distribution. In the evening or in the afternoon, we're too hot. In the morning, we're cold. Whereas we're
Right.
looking at something totally different on controls, because there may be a control issue because of deferred maintenance, right? And so when you take that, it allows you to really pinpoint where the problem lies. But you can only do that by offering, number one, accountability, by owning the problem, and offering a space for genuine feedback.
Right. I always say that about my husband's school too. He teaches where my niece goes. And I'm like, you have a different kind of skin in the game because it's not your own kid that goes there. And it's
Right.
kind of easy to like brush off the concerns of like parents because it doesn't directly affect you. But when it's your niece, that's something different because you hear it from my sister all the time. So he's able to go and present those issues saying like, hey, this is something that's actually really affecting them.
Absolutely. We need to know that the consequences of deferred maintenance without a plan, right?
Mhm.
Without accountability and without a plan, greatly affects teaching and learning. It affects, the student well-being, staff help, day-to-day building operations. Then we've been faced, unfortunately, with roof leaks, which
Oh,
have greatly compromised. I mean, imagine that for those who are listening, particularly those in the education space, like, oh no, we've never dealt with roof leaks. But yeah, no, so roof leaks, that's a very real thing, particularly in the Midwest and
yeah,
Northeast.
right.
And and when you're faced with the winter thaw, right? Once that snow starts to melt, that water is gonna pond
Right.
if there are issues on that flat roof. And that
Mhm.
water we know is going to find some place to go. And the water, imagine, does not determine, no, I'm just going to go to like the restroom, or I'm going to go to the hall, or I'm going to go to the corner. No,
Oh,
the water always makes its way to a classroom. Imagine that, right? And
right, with like the
so
most expensive equipment in it
you
too.
got it. You got it. And so, you have to relocate that classroom. You have to uproot the educational environment of the teacher and those students due to safety concerns, because we
Mhm.
know water intrusion over a period of time can compromise indoor air quality. And so you definitely have to have, a plan for all of that, and you have to recognize the voices of the folk who are in those classrooms 8 hours a day. That has
Mhm.
to be done.
Well, some kids, that's all they have. That is their home, that is their safe place. And to have a building that's falling apart on them, that can have detrimental effects on their well-being.
Yeah, physical, educational, and so as we're formulating these plans through prioritization, rank, and rating, and that's something that my team will tell you I say often, and we have to tweak that, right, seasonally, because of different things that happen during the course of the season. At the beginning of the year, we could focus on roof replacements or patching with a certain set of roofs throughout the course of that year. However, once we reach the other side of the winter, it could be a building that was lower on the rank has now escalated, right, because of the weight of the snow and because of the ponding of the water. But when you're creating that plan, you have to realize the true effects of school buildings. School buildings are stabilizers of neighborhoods. They're the beacon of neighborhoods, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we know that if left unattended, if left unaddressed, if we don't talk to stakeholders and explain what's going on, like we have this shortfall, but here's our plan. If we just let it go unnoticed, that affects teacher morale. And so what happens with teachers? They may choose to find another district. It affects the psyche of students, and parents become displeased. And so what happens with students? Families choose to take those children elsewhere. And if that continues to happen, we can discourage future investment from philanthropy and from businesses. And before long, we have decimated neighborhoods. Now, I know that's on the far end, but we see it happening time after time after time again, because we have to how to do more less. But we have to moreover communicate, hey, community, we know we have to do more with less, and this is our plan. And we want you to be willing and able participants as we enact this plan and go through this together.
Right. How have you had success in leveraging federal or state grants to reduce your maintenance backlog?
Yeah, that's tricky, especially what we're facing now.
Right.
I think the greatest example, honestly, was the one-time COVID funding. I mean, who
Mhm.
knows if we'll ever see that again, right? So our district received about $1.1 billion. Can you imagine? And
Mhm.
one-time COVID funding. And we've made a commitment. Obviously, we needed to stabilize some things with respect to staff. We needed to ensure that students were in school safely. And so
Right.
there were different bonuses that were tied to that. But we also knew that this was the perfect opportunity to attend to school facilities. You see,
Right.
our district we cannot bond based on how we came out of emergency management, and there was a new school district that was formed. And so the former school district, Detroit Public School, is on the books for tax capture, and we've reached the top of our mills there. So when I say we have to do more with less, we truly have to do more with less. So we determined we would use those one-time funds to tackle some of the building issues. We received $700 million from that $1.1 million investment. Very proud to say, and talking with my nationally, that's the largest percentage of funding that any urban educational school district has received to just focus on facilities, right?
Oh, that's
Very
really
much needed. We're building five new facilities and one next. We're expanding with that money. We are replacing the roofs, right? Those examples that I mentioned, tens of roofs. We're renovating more than 60 schools. We're reactivating another school that was formerly closed. All of this, obviously, as a result of very detailed and meticulous planning
Mhm.
and working with community partners to determine where best to place these investments, looking at enrollment, those types of things. With respect to our day-to-day, we cannot use um, federal funding that we receive, like for titles, et cetera, for our buildings. Those are restricted funds. However, we've been able to tap into some grants that can help us with our infrastructure with respect to our like some of our modes of transportation. And so we've been able to do some things there. Um, but we're always looking for additional grants, and we know that sometimes there's power in collaborating with other school districts and with others to get grants. For example, as a result of attending a conference, we learned of an energy grant
Okay.
a couple of years ago, and we were one of the first recipients. We were in the first cohort of an energy grant that allowed us to conduct a study to determine which buildings we wanted to validate our thoughts, our hypotheses of which buildings could stand to have significantly more investment and energy conservation. And this wasn't necessarily installing new conventions such as geothermal, things like that, but this was really focusing on something as simple as our controls. Are your controls in your building working correctly so that we could conserve energy? We were able to do that through a federal grant.
How do you build up morale? Obviously, maintenance can help improve morale for students and teachers, but I feel like that's kind of a lot of pressure that's on your shoulders.
Yeah, morale is multifaceted. There's morale from our custodians and building engineers and boiler operators and tradesmen and tradeswomen. And then there's morale of those who are actually in buildings. I think having clear and consistent communication is a morale builder. Because I know the absence of clear and consistent communication can threaten morale, right? And so maintaining that of what's taking place in the buildings, ensuring that custodians know how buildings are going to be used. We're going to have, a school dance with 200 people, ensuring that custodians are fully aware of what's taking place so that they can prepare, how to clean that space. How to ensure that they have proper products and supplies in advance as well as after that particular activity. Same thing with our building engineers to ensure that there's optimal temperature in the intended space. Communication is very important. Can you imagine without it? Our building engineers work from 6 a.m. until 2:30 in the afternoon. If there's an after-school event, particularly in the winter months, we need to know about it to ensure that we have proper heat, that they're not just working on residual heat. As far as our school administrators and our teachers are concerned, when there are plans for repairing a fence, or when there are plans for repaving a parking lot, I think it behooves us to provide opportunities to share what that plan and what the schedule is. Without it, you receive, numerous calls, and that affects morale as well. Like, they call us downtown. I don't know what the central office spaces are called in other districts, but in our district, those who work in schools, they call us downtown. Although we're not downtown, but they call us downtown. And so, the thought is, they don't care about us downtown because they're not repaving the lot. When in actuality, the lot repavement could actually be on the schedule for 2 months out. But without communicating that, right, it invokes a certain amount of frustration. And so, yes, communication is key, and consistent communication is greatly needed to build and to maintain morale.
How does deferred maintenance affect learning equity across different school buildings? And how can facility managers begin to address this?
Yeah, we know negligent facilities and facility planning that can result in some serious problems, some real problems. Assessments are important. Even if the facility managers don't have within their budget to create a formal assessment by contracting someone to provide that formal assessment every 3 years, or perhaps their structures they have, an assessment group within some of your larger companies that are nationally. those assessments need to be conducted on a regular basis. And we're told, about 3 years now is good, because you have to revisit that whole prioritization, rank, and rate process. Um, in the absence of that, there has to be some type of commitment in-house to assess things ourselves. And that can be based on work orders, right? By really being in tune to the CMMS, and reviewing that data. We say something in education in terms of data-driven decisions to educate students. I think data-driven decision making can be used far beyond education proper with regard to facility maintenance. So really being in tune to that data, really being in tune to the life cycle of our mechanical systems, and also generating the report to ensure that top tier decision makers are fully apprised, not just of the status, but of the aftermath if gone unattended. So I like to say you have to start with the worst case scenario. Like, if we do not attend to this within this period of time, we may have to close this facility, right? And most of us say that's far-fetched. Like, we've gone from, replacing Sloan valves to closing the facility. Like, that's such a far stretch. But you have to share how it builds. It builds. If we do not attend to this, and we've prioritized, this is what the data is telling us. If we do not do this, this will ultimately hurt us. This will hurt the bottom line of the private businesses, those who are not working in schools or municipalities. Like, this is how this is going to affect profits. With municipalities, this is how this will affect city and county and state services. And with schools, this is how this will have a detrimental effect on children and their education. Use the data to ensure that those top tier decision makers are aware greatly that, or chiefly, that maintenance affects operations. And then from there, these are the most critical needs. And we forecasted these needs based on what needs to take place in the next year. Mm-hmm. It's important. It's important to organize, but it's even more important to communicate.
Right. Obviously, deferred maintenance is not a quick fix, but is there any quick wins that facility managers can implement in their schools just to help their buildings?
Yeah, it isn't. It is not. Hence deferred, right?
Right.
I think, understanding what you can do minimally before those problems escalate with the few funds that you have, and advocate for funding through unique practices. And I know that's easier said than done, but let me give an example. Again, I moved into this, right? 2018, faced with the water crisis. And I thought, what a way to bait and switch, right? I wasn't informed about the water crisis after I signed the dotted line. And then, I came in and started looking at some of the building problems, and I was like, oh my goodness, what have I signed myself up for? Because we had no money. Again, we couldn't bond. We didn't have a sinking fund. We didn't have all of these other conventions of accessing revenue to address our capital needs. However, we did have vacancies. Mm-hmm. We did have vacancies within our school district. And so the thought was, our district, with our budget, we do not roll over, quote, AirPlus, or air quote, surplus dollars from one school year to another year. We reset at zero. So with the zero-based budget, what would happen to the surplus dollars for all of the positions that were vacant, that were yet unfilled? And so I was able to petition to those for those dollars. Um, and we use those dollars to attend to some of the larger needs, but then also attend to some of the smaller, less costly maintenance issues before they act. So what did this look like? Well, again, it goes back to roofing. We had numerous buildings that were in need of a complete roof. That's not something that we could do. But we started looking at other avenues of water intrusion. We found that with some, it was masonry issues, and so we were able to address in-house, some of those masonry issues. And then with others, we learned that, well, though this roof needs to be replaced, the roof drains are clogged.
Right.
And so the roof drains are what's exacerbating the issue. So let's address those to kind of slow that down. And then after we address those, let's tarp the roof, which is unsightly. Most people say, what? Did you tarp the roof? But to your point, when you are in the day-to-day and your budget is super tight, it causes you to think out of the box on addressing the greater problems before they result in the closure of a school building. And
Right.
so we did tarp a few buildings. It worked. And then we also worked with the principals and explained, this is what we're faced with. We understand that this building is at 80% capacity. And so let's work together. We're trying by tarping and clearing the roof drains, et cetera. We believe that these areas are going to be affected by roof leaks. And so let's commit to not using these areas of the building, these particular classrooms of the building. Let's focus on using other classrooms. We'll move the furniture, we'll work with the teachers, we'll move them. We did that in several buildings as well. It wasn't easy. It wasn't a quick fix. And to some degree, I wouldn't recommend it unless you're faced with serious budget issues. Mm-hmm. Accountability, communication, consistent communication, and out of the box thinking.
Yes, you have to be. This is what I've learned in writing for facilities management. You have to be incredibly empathetic. You have to be incredibly creative. And I don't think people necessarily equate those two with this industry, but all facility managers are creative. And
for sure.
Very nice people.
I once heard of a guy who addressed a boiler need with a wooden baseball bat. Talk about creativity, right? Now, again, I would not recommend taking your Louisville Slugger into a boiler room. However, I was told years ago that that was how he was able to provide some stabilization. But yes, creativity is key. And having the willingness to say, this is an old term, but by hook or crook, we've got to attend to this. We have to do it. These communities are depending on us.
That I have for you today, Machion. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you. Thank you so much once again for listening to the quirky stories about, everything from bats to, all the things that take place with respect to facility management. It's hard work, but it's definitely worthwhile, especially working with team members who are very much committed to providing the optimal learning environments for students. It has been my absolute pleasure working with my team and talking with you today. Absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you so much, Machion. I'll link her cover story in the show notes too, so that everyone can read it. But you're a great person. It's always great talking to you.
Likewise. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Facilities in Focus podcast. Facilities in Focus is a product of the facility market, which houses FacilitiesNet, building operating management, facilities maintenance decisions, and healthcare facilities today. Thank you to our sound and video editor, Paul Ellertson. Thank you to Machion Jackson for designing our logo. Thank you to Dan Welton, Dave Lubach, Dan Hounsell, Jeff Warden, Jill McDermott, and everyone else at Trade Press Media Group. For comments, or if you are interested in being a guest on Facilities in Focus, please email us at fnpodcast@tradepress.com.